I'm pretty late to this review. This movie came out in October, and I'm just now reviewing it in December. I honestly thought I was kind of too late for this movie, because it had stopped showing at the closest theater to me. But then I just found the other day that it was at a theater that's about 20 minutes away or so. So I made the trip out there, went to go see it. And that movie I'm talking about is Dune. This is a retelling of the original book. From what I've heard, it's not actually a remake, it's just a retelling and its own interpretation of the original story. Similar to Steven Spielberg's West Side Story. This is directed by Denis Villeneuve, who, as far as I'm concerned, has been on an absolute streak as of late, even just with his last three films, Arrival, Blade Runner 2049, and now Dune. He has come out with some great movies this past decade. I haven't seen any of his other ones, but I've heard great things about them as well. This movie has a huge cast, tons of A-list actors across the board. The score being done by Hans Zimmer. I mean, this movie just really has a lot going for it. And I'll be completely honest up front, I haven't seen the original movie from the 1980s, and I haven't read the original book, but I was very intrigued by just the concept of this movie. With its mix of these old, I don't know if this is the right way to say it, but these sort of old-timey traditions and these very futuristic qualities and technology, it somehow is able to strike a balance of feeling like this very futuristic and advanced world, while also at times feeling like a period piece with the ways people are talking and their clothes. I hope that makes sense the way I'm describing it, but if you've seen the movie, then I'm sure you definitely know what I'm talking about. Since I am so late to this review, a lot of the praises I have for it you've probably heard in other reviews if you watch reviews on YouTube. But I mean, nonetheless, I agree with, I think, what most people's opinions on this movie were. Speaking from a visual standpoint, the amount of scope and size and feel of all of these objects and places that they're able to capture in the film is genuinely mind-blowing. Like, if you thought that Rogue One had good scope, which it certainly does, you can feel a lot of the weights and sizes of things in that movie, that doesn't even compare to Dune. Dune is just on a completely other level visually and sonically as well. The score done by Hans Zimmer is incredibly fitting for what happens in this movie, for certain visual cues that Denis will go to from time to time. It makes use of bagpipes even, which work surprisingly well. It's avant-garde at times, it's kind of laid back and ambient at other times. I mean, really, I don't know all of Hans Zimmer's work, but from what I have heard, this is, I think, easily one of the most varied pieces of musical score that I've heard from him ever. So visually speaking, sonically speaking, this movie provides more than enough eye candy and ear candy for the audience members. But how are the characters? How is the story? And how's the cast? I would say, for the most part, it's almost just as good. We, of course, have Timothée Chalamet in the lead role playing the character Paul. He's kind of like that chosen one type of character, you know, like a Luke Skywalker or Harry Potter or Neo. And generally, this movie does kind of follow that formula that a lot of other movies and just adaptations of things have in the past. And it's for that reason I wouldn't consider it a flaw, because just so many things do that, even loads more than the few that I just now mentioned. But I thought Timothée did a great job as the lead character. He had just the right amount of subdued qualities and very expressive and emotional qualities to his performance. We have Rebecca Ferguson playing Lady Jessica, who is Paul's mother. You could really make the argument that she is actually also the lead character, and that Paul and Jessica are just the two dual lead characters. And while she didn't stand out quite as much as me to Timothée in his performance, I still thought she did a very good job. Oscar Isaac plays Paul's father in the movie. I thought he was pretty good as well. Josh Brolin is great, just like a sort of mentor type figure to Paul. Stellan Skarsgård as this character that I at least interpreted to be the primary villain of the story was really great. He wasn't in the movie that much, but every scene he was in, he absolutely knocked it out of the park. Very, very menacing and intimidating. Jason Momoa plays the character Duncan, who to me was one of the more heartwarming aspects of the movie. He was very funny, charismatic, also total badass, and he's also one of Paul's mentors. I think a complaint with this movie that I would expect to hear from people is that with it being so long, it's just over 2.5 hours. With it being that long, and also with it being a part 1 to a series, that there are moments in the movie that feel a little bit dull and feel like not much is really going on with the story, not much is really progressing. And while I can agree to that with an extent, and I will say that there were certainly some moments in the movie where I was kind of just waiting for the next big moment to happen, the next like really intense moment, because this movie does have some very intense scenes throughout it. I can't say that I was ever bored with it, and that is mainly because of how good all the acting is, but also, like I said, just how visually pleasing this is to the eyes. Bunch of ear candy as well with the score. It was never boring to me, and yeah, there were moments that did feel slow. This is definitely a very slowly paced movie. It is a slow burn that will require patience from a lot of viewers and people watching the movie. It's also just very important to take into account that this is a part one. It's going to be a whole nother part to this. This is just half of the story. But that's really the main issue I can think of for my thoughts on this, is that just certain moments I was kind of just waiting for that next big moment and that big scene to happen. Other than that, I really don't have much else to complain about. Dune was a pretty big surprise for me. I was expecting to enjoy it. I had heard good things about it, but going into it not really knowing anything about this story and about this lore, I enjoyed it much more than I thought I would. All the cast did a great job. Villeneuve's direction is excellent as always. And filmmaking wise, this movie is honestly unparalleled with a lot of movies that I've seen lately, and specifically movies from this year. I definitely expect and anticipate this getting lots of Oscar nominations in, you know, all of the sound and visual categories. It really is a feast for the eyes, and it also happens to have very good substance to back it up. And so with that said, I'm going to give Dune an A-. I'm so glad that I was able to see this before it completely left theaters. I'm also very excited for part 2. It was just confirmed, I think about a month ago, which is interesting because when this originally came out, there was no confirmation of a part 2 happening, so it really depended on if enough people want to go see it and it made enough money at the box office. But thankfully it did. A lot of people want to go see this. If you haven't seen this movie, I would highly recommend it, especially in a theater. I really think it is meant for that theatrical experience. But if you have seen this movie, let me know what you think of it in the comments, or if you've seen the original 1980s adaptation or read the book, what do you think of those? How do you think it compares to this one? And thanks for watching. Peace out.